Okay, great. All right, so again, welcome to our second ever live info session. Really, this is an opportunity for you all to learn more about how the neural sleeve works, get to meet our team and ask any questions that you may have about the system and whether it's a fit for you. And so please enter questions in the chat throughout, and we will leave time to answer in a Q&A throughout the session as well as at the end. And so without further ado, I'm delighted to hand it over to CIONIC founder and CEO, Jeremiah Robison.
Awesome. Thank you, Anne. So nice to see everyone here. I'm going to share a short presentation, but leave lots of time for Q&A. All right. We see this cute little girl here on the left. That is my daughter, Sophia, and she was the real motivation behind me starting CIONIC. Like many of the folks on this call, she lives with a mobility difference caused by a neurological condition. In her case, it's cerebral palsy, which is a one-time injury at birth. She was born super premature at 28 weeks and 0 days and came out not breathing, and as a common consequence, has a condition that impairs her ability to walk. And as a parent, I was continually frustrated by the lack of options to help with her mobility and independence, especially as we looked ahead, the life that she wanted to live and the one that I hoped that we could make for her. And so that was really the inspiration for building CIONIC. And I'm excited to tell you a little bit about the technology, how it works, who it works for, and answer any questions that you have. I'm joined here today by Dr. Rebecca Webster, who is our head of clinical affairs. So I'll take some of the technology and business questions. She'll take a lot of the clinical and care questions. But as I always like to start out these calls, I wanted to share the perspective of one of our current users, so you can hear a little bit from her, how the CIONIC neural sleeve has impacted her mobility and her quality of life.
Oh, my name's Patty Glatfelter, and I'm 69 years old. Born and raised in Colorado. Was a physical therapist since 1976, and developed MS in 1990. I would say the first couple of years were some of the toughest, and there were no medications. There was nothing except good luck, hope for the best. I went and got counseling fairly soon afterwards because I thought I had never been that depressed in my entire life. And I thought, you cannot live like this, Patty. You have to move on. I've been a PT since 1976 when the first TENS unit was put on the market. The technology has changed so much, and the CIONIC sleeve has taken it to a different level than anything else that I have encountered, either with patients or with myself. But this has done things that I really didn't know could be possible with technology. So it was interesting the first time I had the sleeve put on, for the evaluation, whether or not I'd be a good candidate. And I came in skeptical, like, oh, okay, another gadget. And then I put it on and I walked like 20 feet. And it was like, I almost started squealing. It was like I was so excited because I could feel my brain was receptive. My brain was saying, here we go.
So what I really like about what Patty shares, and yeah, obviously rah-rah, we're excited to share this technology with everyone, but that's not really the point of sharing this video. The point is a few of the things that I felt, and I think we all feel both as patients and caregivers of people with neurological differences. One, a frustration, right? It feels like there is all this amazing technology out in the world, but why is none of it accessible to me? Second is that there has really been an evolution of that technology in the last 10 years that makes this possible. And a lot of what you're seeing in the news about AI and these other things is a culmination of machines being able to understand and take on challenges that have not been accessible before. And the third is something that really excites me about the particular specifics of our technology, which is around the focus on that connection between the brain and the body. So our system uses functional electrical stimulation as the mechanism for activating muscles in the body in a sequence of complex motor movements, such as walking. And so I always like to start with, what does our sleeve look like and how does it work? And so it really is not a brace. It is not an exoskeleton. It is intended to feel like and wear like a garment. It's 2 layers of Lycra with electrodes embedded in the system that can address the 4 major muscle groups of the leg: the quadriceps, the hamstrings, the shin TA dorsiflexor complex, and the calf. And so what we did was we take something, for those who are experienced, and that was part of my motivation, was seeing how functional electrical stimulation was used in clinical practice. We often see spending time getting the electrodes placed just right. So if we could take our electrodes and, instead of having a single positive and negative electrode, turn that into an electrode array, we'd actually be able to use software to tune that in real time according to the user's needs. 2, the systems that I saw that had electrical stimulation were just doing stimulation. They weren't tracking movement. So the same array that we use for stimulation, we actually can use that to read muscle firings, and we can also use sensors within the garment to track the movement of the limbs through space. This allows us to continuously update those algorithms in real time to address the challenges that people are having with their motor movements. And so this is my daughter again, and she's wearing an early prototype of this. And what we can see is, on the left side and the right side is surface EMG. So this is tracking how her brain is signaling her muscles. What we can see is some left side weakness, some spasticity in the calf, and we're also able to track the muscles or the limbs through space. So that little diagram of the robot in the bottom, that's all on body-worn sensors, right? So the same type of thing that you might get if you go do a gait analysis in the lab, surface EMG to track muscle firings. They use high-speed cameras to track and do kinematic analysis. We're able to do that in real time. And that was always something that I laughed about when we would go do gait analysis with my daughter. They would spend an hour putting the little reflective dots on her and wiring her up with the sensors. And she would walk 10 steps across force plates and a flat surface and 10 steps back. And they'd hand me a stack of papers about that thing and say, this is how you walk. And it had nothing to do with how she walked in the real environment when she's at school, when she's going out on errands and there's people around and she's distracted or she's being jostled. Like this is what real world walking looks like. So how can we actually capture that in real time? So that's where we started. And then we said, okay, great. So now that we have an understanding of how both the cause, how the brain is firing or misfiring the muscles, and how the responding in terms of how the limbs are moving through space. Now let's see if we can actually augment that. So using those same electrodes, we're actually able to steer those electrodes in real time and create a nuanced movement. So this is just demonstrating the power of that. And what you can see is, by steering in software the current, small amount of current across those electrodes, we're able to create really nuanced movement of the body. And this really allows for us to do some interesting and very customized configurations for each user to make sure that they're getting the best response from our technology. And so here's one of our users. This is multiple sclerosis, diagnosed almost 30 years ago, and this is without stimulation. You see very limited range of motion, low foot clearance, slow gait speed. Now this is with all 4 muscles of her right more impacted side being stimulated. We see greater range of motion, greater foot clearance, faster gait speed, all things that enable her to do more of the activities that she wants to do, and do those with less fatigue. And so this is in the single session, right? And so that's a really interesting point where, for this particular trial participant, they saw the effect immediately. And that's how we did our initial clinical trials. We did a single session with back-to-back trials with stim and without stim, and looked at the differences in just the kinematics of gait, meaning how the foot travels through space during the swing phase of gait. For users who have symptomatic foot drop, there's a primary concern. Can I clear my foot to avoid tripping? And can I land it in a stable fashion so that I can avoid rolling an ankle? And this is really where that tuning of the stimulation parameters really shows off. You can see in the dark blue, this is dorsiflexion, how much clearance you get of the toe through the swing face. But the light blue is also equally as important. It's what we see oftentimes with people with foot drop is that their ankle is turning in, what's called inversion. And so that light blue is the correction to normative, to a neutral ankle position at heel strike. And what you can see is everybody's a little bit different, right? We have some people who need a lot more help with dorsiflexion, some people need a lot more help with inversion. But overall, we're able to help, and we were able to help. 94% showed positive improvements to the ankle kinematics during this initial single session trial. And that green line is the average, and that's 9.8 degrees, which is 2 times what is considered minimal clinical significance. So really nice improvements sort of across the board, really customized to each people. And that's great, but we're still back in the lab, right? We're still back in a single session in a controlled environment. So we sent people home and for a 12-week home trial. So this was 2021. This is a while ago. Oh my goodness. And we had them use the device for 12 months. We would check in with them on a regular basis, make sure the system was giving them the benefits they needed. And we monitored them on a few different elements, not just mobility. And we did see the improvements in mobility, specifically in gait speed for all of our users. And that was really exciting. But what's really interesting to us is that there were also quality of life improvements beyond just the mobility. So we saw people who were entered our study with moderate to severe pain, a significant decrease over that 12 weeks. People with moderate to severe anxiety or depression, another significant decrease. And I think this, in retrospect, stands to reason, right? Gait, mobility, our ability to participate in activities and communities, these are really important aspects of our lives, and being able to participate in those to a greater extent has amazing benefits, even beyond just what is a simple metric like gait speed. So that was all 2 years ago now, and we took all that data and we rolled it up and we took that to the FDA. And in early 2022, we got our FDA clearance as a prescription-only medical class 2 device. And that allowed us to go raise a little bit more money so that we could take this product to market and make it available. And what we really pushed with the FDA when we were going through that clearance process was giving more control to our users, control to choose what exercises they wanted to do to help strengthen and increase range of motion, how to set up their device to get the most out of it on everyday use, and different training modes so that you could either use just time stimulation in exercise or use muscle trigger. Oh, look, I spelled a word wrong. Stimulation. Muscle triggered stimulation, time stimulation. We have all these exercises because we want it to be a complete tool. Of course, the hero is gait support. And when we look at this, when you get set up, you have the ability to customize this on a daily basis. We have a customizable electrode array that I mentioned before. We have flexible stimulation parameters. So we want to maximize the amount of comfort and efficacy that each person feels and the confidence they have with each step. And we have support for up to 8 muscles if you're a dual sleeve user, and we have a number of people who use 2 sleeves every day. We also support different contexts. So walking is over ground is the primary mode, but we also support walking on stairs and also stationary so that it's not firing while you're standing and not moving. We also think it's important to track metrics over time. One of the things we hear is like, how am I progressing? How is my mobility over time? So we make sure, we like to think of our users, not as patients, but as consumers. We want to build a device and a system that is constantly improving. And what we've heard And that what we were able to roll in the last few months was new metrics to track how active am I? What's my gait speed? What is my stride length? And we're adding new metrics all the time. So gait variability, understanding from step to step how different is each step. And then how's my balance? A lot of people talk about challenges that they have with balance. So what can we do, one, to track that, and then adding additional exercises to help with balance. We also do all of this remote, right? So we do it from the comfort of your own home. Becky, I think you're almost wearing the same sweater today. So, but this is a picture from our, what Becky sees when she is working with our customers and the rest of our mobility specialists, which is a mix of physical therapists and exercise physiologists, people who have experience with hands-on and now telehealth setup for our users, and they can customize all the programs. So you know, you don't have to have you know, go to a brick and mortar place. You can do this in the comfort of your home, and you can do it when it makes sense, right? So I think one of the things we see is there's an initial setup, and then as people get used to the device and using it, our mobility specialists can check in on them, update parameters, change the exercise programs, etc. So that's a description, high level of all of the system works. And now for some of the sort of detailed questions, what does it cost? So one of the things we thought was really important, because I've tried a number of different solutions for my daughter, and they were all out-of-pocket, high-cost items that there was no try before you buy, and you know, no guarantee that they work. So we said, let's pay as you go, right? So you know, it's like if you take a pill and it's working, you continue to take that pill. Same thing with a device. So $200 down payment, and then $200 a month for 12 months. That includes the neural sleeve, setup and check-ins with our wonderful CIONIC care team, software and electrodes and all the things that need to keep it running. After the first year, you own the hardware. We are just 1 year in, so we have not yet finalized the prices for year 2. We're learning all of the information about how much it costs for us to run the service, what usage patterns look like for electrodes. So we'll announce the year 2 pricing. It'll be less than the $200 a month that folks pay in the first year, and we'll announce that. And we in the coming month. And this cancel anytime, we call it our step together guarantee. Any reason it's not working for you, it's not meeting your expectations, you just cancel, return the sleeve, stop paying. It is FSA and HSA eligible as a prescription only medical device. We have, and we get lots of questions about reimbursement. What I can tell you is it's a mixed bag. Some insurers with a great letter of medical necessity from your neurologist or your primary care physician will provide some amount of reimbursement, but it's still on a case-by-case basis. And as we gather more data and do additional trials, then we'll have the ability to advocate more for broader coverage. So still early days, but it's a priority for us to try to make this affordable and accessible for as many people as possible. How do I order? Again, virtual. Do it from the comfort of your home and in front of your computer. With one exception, you do need a prescription. So you go online, answer a 5-question assessment. This is basically checking what is your current medical diagnosis. Are there any contraindications, like if you have a pacemaker, for example? Then you enter your measurements so we can make a sleeve that fits right for you. And then you get a prescription from your primary care doctor, your neurologist, or a nurse practitioner. You record a walking video, again, in the comfort of your own home, send that in. This allows our mobility specialist to prepare for what will be your first online setup appointment. And the neural sleeve ships in about 6 to 10 weeks from the point in time where we get your prescription. That was fast. I think we're at Q&A, and so I'll pause there and stop sharing and take, well, the group of us will take any questions that you have.
Yes, so we have a lot of questions. So thank you to everybody, and I see that there are more coming through. I'll send the first few to Becky. We've had some questions about, is the sleeve appropriate for everyday use? So the first individual who asked this said that they put on their AFO in the morning, remove it before bed. So can you just talk about, so 2 questions on this front. One, can you talk about how applicable it is for everyday use and how people get kind of acclimated to the system? And then we got another question about AFOs in general and whether the neural sleeve can reduce reliance on that as a device.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll just start by the everyday use. So when someone starts out with the sleeve, we recommend sort of a gradual onboarding or use of the sleeve, generally starting off with about an hour of stimulated use for the first day or two, just to make sure that your skin tolerates the gel pads and the sleeve, that you're monitoring muscle fatigue, and getting used to the stimulation, getting your brain used to the stimulation. But the goal for many people is to be able to use the sleeve all day. We recommend no more really than 8 hours of use, though. That is the life of the battery. And additionally, if you're wearing, the sleeve all day, it's good to, one, give your muscles a break, give your brain a break, and give your skin a break. But generally speaking, we have many customers who wear the sleeve throughout the day. We also have customers who wear the sleeve for particular scenarios or situations. So they may not wear the sleeve when they're in their house, but they use it when they're doing their errands, or they're going out to dinner, or they're being more active in the community. And we have customers who also use the sleeve primarily for exercise programs or walking programs. So it really depends on each individual's goals for mobility and how they can incorporate it into their lifestyle. In terms of an AFO, the ultimate goal would be to move away from your AFO so that the sleeve can control movement at the ankle. So we use the stimulation, primarily the dorsiflexors and the peroneal muscles at the lower leg, to help provide some dynamic stability for the ankle. However, that being said, we do have some customers who have a lot of what we call medial lateral ankle instability. So it kind of rolls a little bit side to side. And so safety is always our number one priority. So if a customer is coming in and we see that the ankle is still perhaps a little unstable, even with the sleeve on, we do often have that individual start with the sleeve and the AFO just to begin with. And we really work on providing strengthening exercises to create more stability in the ankle using the sleeve and their own muscle strength. So the goal eventually would be to move away from using the AFO and using the sleeve primarily.
Thanks, Becky. And then two additional questions for you. So one, in the long term, does this device either weaken or strengthen the involved muscles?
Yeah, so electrical stimulation is used for strengthening. And so it is dynamic. It is contracting the muscles along with your own neuromuscular control. And so will ultimately strengthen or prevent any atrophy.
Great, thanks, Becky. And then another question that I think we could answer more broadly, which is this something that you could use? So if you use it with your workouts, could it actually help you reduce dependence over time?
Reduce dependence on
the device over time. Have we
seen
that?
Oh, yeah, sorry. That is a good question. So everyone responds. I should just preface all of this with everyone responds differently. Every neurological condition is even if you have MS presents in one person one way and another person another way. People have different tolerance to stimulation and different response. So that being said, everyone responds differently to stimulation and uses the device differently as well. We do see individuals who have what we call carryover effects. So that meaning that they see improvement in their walking even when they're not wearing the sleeve. And that could be for a variety of reasons. It could be that they have strengthened the muscles. They may have more range of motion in the joints. They may have improved endurance. They may have neuroplasticity that is helping improve motor control. So there are individuals who, like I said, have these carryover effects and may see more long-term gains. And again, due to maybe a variety of factors where they may not be utilizing the sleeve in the same ways that they did initially. So I don't want to necessarily say that the goal is to improve to the point where you don't wear the sleeve. Really, the recommendation is you continue to use the sleeve as you need it for walking. And those additional changes may occur over time. And it is a process. It is not something, necessarily you put on and right away everything changes. Anytime you are changing your gait pattern or working on strength, it takes a period of time for those changes to occur. So that would be something to monitor over a period of time.
Great, thank you. And then maybe I'll direct this one to Jeremiah, getting some questions from the audience about how, in looking at the world of FES devices, I think you covered a bit of this in the beginning, but if you could just talk about all the reasons that our system is really unique.
Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of, having tried a number of different FES systems with my daughter in the past, there are a number of things that we observed as being challenges that we felt we could address and make better. One was just the number of muscles, right? So especially as we were starting out in our trials, we saw this really profound step change when you went from 1 muscle to 2 muscles, 2 muscles, 3 to 4. And at 4 muscles in someone who is a hemiplegic gait, it was almost as if you were seeing a true reduction in the level of cognitive effort it took for someone to step. And so because of that, just being able to address all 4 muscles ends up being very differentiated from most of the other products that exist in the world. Second is wearability. I said, my daughter says, I'm not going to wear it if it makes me look like I'm a prisoner. So some of the devices that look maybe like a prison. And so making it wearable, making it something that could integrate into what she would wear on a regular basis. 3 was around these electrode arrays, right? And there's sort of 2 parts of that. One is, what can we measure, right? How can we understand what is happening both within the neurological system and also in the kinematic movements. Most other systems won't measure those things. And so this gives us a more complete tool for understanding and intervening with the gait. And then second is the fact that it is software steered. So you can put the device on and, hopefully with a few clicks, get it to just the right electrode placement in software so that you get the effective stimulation. And then third is just the number of activities that we support. We're continuously updating new exercises. We talked about some of the static exercises, some of the ways in which we can trigger stimulation based on muscle activity to reinforce what Becky said, that neuroplasticity, which is sort of the holy grail. Can we actually restore some improvements to the natural muscle firing function through exercise programs, and also support of additional gait modes. So we talked about stairs. We're continuing to develop additional activities to help people move throughout the day. So it's really like taking a look at the challenges, one that we were experiencing as a family and what we were hearing from our research partners and our participants, and say, can we build something that really tries to address it in a very different way. And the last piece I'll say is we tried to innovate on the pricing model, right? So a lot of these things pay, somewhere between $6,000 and $10,000 one time upfront, and you don't hear from the company again. In this case, for us, said, well, that's not care, right? That's not giving you the best of what is possible. All of the new models are like, let's do something where we continue to follow the customer and provide the best possible care throughout their journey with us. So I guess that's a long-winded way of saying we try to look at everything differently, and we will continue to try to look at everything in new ways and respond to the feedback from the community. We're 1 year in, and we're delighted with the results of this first year with our customers after 5 years of working on the product, and are committed to continuing to improve over the next, hopefully, many years.
Great, thanks, Jeremiah. Becky, a few more questions for you. So one, we've had a few more questions just about what the onboarding process is like. So how does somebody get fitted, and then how do they interact with our team to get the neural sleeve system set up for their mobility?
Yeah, absolutely. So through the ordering process, that it starts there, as Jeremiah said, where you submit a walking video, and that is done through the app, and that just gives the clinical team an idea of how each individual is moving and what, what setup we may want to start with. Additionally, during that process, you submit measurements for your leg. And so we use those measurements to determine the fit for the sleeve. Once everything is in your order, your measurements, your prescription, your walking video, then the sleeve will be shipped out. And at that point, you can make an onboarding appointment with your mobility specialist. There are some videos that you need to watch prior to that appointment so that you're ready for the appointment. And you set up a virtual onboarding. Jeremiah showed the screen that we see people through on their app. You would download the CIONIC app and join us virtually, one of the mobility specialists, and we will walk you through the process of getting set up. So putting the sleeve on, ideally you come to the appointment with the sleeve on, but making sure that it's a good fit, walking you through the app, setting the parameters, teaching you how to change parameters as you may need to throughout the day. And then after that initial setup appointment, we set up anywhere between 1 and 4 muscles, depending on the need of the individual and their response to stimulation. And then we set a follow-up appointment or whatever is needed for that individual to feel comfortable using the system. And then additionally, we're always available for customer support, but you can as well set up appointments with your mobility specialist if you need adjustments or your gait pattern is changing over time and you may want to change your muscle setup.
Thanks, Becky. And then a few more questions that I'll direct to you. First around, are there any, what is the target range of mobility for people who might be a fit for the neural sleeve? And can you just talk a little bit about that? And then also some questions around hand dexterity and putting on the sleeve.
Yeah. So generally speaking, the sleeve is best fit for those who are walking with or without an assistive device. And so ideally, and that being said, if you are not walking, please feel free to reach out to us. And that's conversation we can discuss how you may want to utilize the device. But generally speaking, we have a spectrum of individuals who are walking and maybe walking 10 feet or so in a particular bout, to those individuals who may not have visible walking impairments immediately when they start walking, but may start to experience foot drop after a certain amount of time or distance. And so there's a wide spectrum of mobility or walking mobility that we see in the customers. And then the second one was about the hand dexterity. So that is a good question. It does require a bit of hand dexterity to take on and take off or put on and take off the sleeve. And so also that is something we reach out to customers prior to ordering. If in the walking video, we notice that there may be some challenges with hand dexterity. So we provide some information up front. There are some tips and tricks for using one hand to put the sleeve on that we can provide. We also, if there's someone available, that's always a good go-to if you have someone who can help you put on and take off the device. However, it is possible with one hand. And like I said, we do provide, specific tips and tricks, but if you do have questions about your own hand dexterity, please reach out to us at any time prior to ordering through support@cionic.com. I'm happy to answer those questions.
And I just want to provide a little bit more context on how much walking, what have we seen as sort of the minimum. We've had individuals who use a wheelchair for their primary mobility, but that were able with a walker, for example, to walk, as Becky said, 10 to 20 feet total. So what that allows us to do is just give us a baseline for the weight bearing and what is possible from the stimulation, and then it's building up from there. So I didn't want it to sound like you have to be walking for us to help you walk. There's a minimum amount of walking and ability to bear weight that is a baseline for our technology to then improve endurance and strength, and the length of time and the quality, and in some ways the fall risk reduction of gait with our device.
Thanks, Jeremiah. Becky, several questions about hip flexion and whether the neural sleeve can assist with hip flexion.
That is a great question. The neural sleeve and FES devices in general do not specifically target hip flexors. Those muscles, or that muscle, the iliopsoas muscle, is really deep. And to specifically target that muscle with electrical stimulation would most likely be pretty uncomfortable. That being said, we do see, and customers report, improvements to hip flexion with the use of the device. And that may be for a variety of reasons. It may be that the stride length is increased, and if you have a longer stride length, you sort of stretch out that hip flexor, and it kind of acts as a rubber band to help you swing your leg forward. It could be that the other muscles are now more active, and that kind of gives a little bit more energy that can go into the hip flexor and for the individual to activate their own hip flexor. It could be that the kinematics, or the smoothness of the gait pattern just allows that hip flexor to be in a better kind of position to activate. And then lastly, posture also can help improve hip flexor ability to contract. So oftentimes we see people who may have more of a flex posture start to have more of an upright posture. That upright posture puts that hip flexor in a better sort of mechanical advantage to contract. And so secondarily, we do see that customers do report improvements to hip flexion, even though that the device does not specifically target hip flexors.
Great. And then a question from someone about bilateral use. They have MS and they are equally impacted. Can you talk about how to decide between one sleeve and two?
Yeah, absolutely. So we always start out onboarding with one sleeve, even if you want to go through the process of ordering two. I do recommend, if you're thinking about two, maybe you talk to your physician and have the physician write a prescription for both legs, so you don't have to go back and get a second prescription. But we generally start with one leg to make sure, one, that it's going to be a good fit, that it's effective, that it's comfortable, that it's, that it's working for you. And then we send the second sleeve after the setup of the first sleeve. There are occasions, for the most part, generally speaking, people after that first one, there's a period of time. Some people right away are like, okay, I'm ready for my second sleeve. Some people take, a couple weeks to determine, is this going to be a good fit? Okay, now I'm ready for the second sleeve. But we absolutely have customers using two sleeves.
Great. And then one more question, Becky, for you about, is this something that you can use if there's a fair amount of sensory loss in the extremities?
Yeah, we do have individuals who have sensory loss. That is something we take precautions about, just if in case, if you don't sense the stimulation, we want to just be very careful about how we're adjusting the intensity and making sure that the individual is comfortable and it's effective and it's safe to use. Depending on the level of sensory loss, there may be changes in the effectiveness. And again, that's kind of case by case, for each individual, how the nervous system responds to the stimulation.
Yeah, and one thing that I'll just add is that we do love to collaborate with your physicians or physical therapists on, to make sure that the system is right for you. And when there are questions like that, if you consult with your physician and even point them to us or introduce them to us, we're happy to talk with them as well.
Great. We've had a lot of questions about how the sensation of the stimulation compares to other FES devices on the market.
Yeah, I can take that. It's similar, and we use similar stimulation techniques to other devices on the market. So one of the things that is a difference. Some folks use the sort of sponge-based electrodes. We found that the best response comes through the hydrogel electrodes, and that's why we've chosen to use those. So typically someone will report that's a bit more comfortable using the hydrogel electrodes than the reusable sponge-based electrodes. Other than that, the other report is just when you're stimulating all four muscles, there's a lot going on. And so that's why we sort of recommend starting with one muscle and iterating up as it's comfortable. But we've had people say, oh, wow, there's a lot more comfortable than other devices. And we have people say like, oh, I don't like this stimulation as much as other devices. So it is like pretty personal to the user itself.
Thanks, Jeremiah. We've had quite a few questions about battery life. I think we touched on this briefly, but if we can talk about battery life and then what type of charger we use.
Yeah, I'll take that one as well. So your battery life will depend a large amount on how high the stimulation needs to be turned up based on your own response and physiology and how active you are. So what does most of the battery life go to? It's the stimulation itself. Our goal is 8 hours of use, and I would say on average, that's what people have. And from a charger perspective, as a class 2 medical device, we have to provide the charger, and technically you're not supposed to use other chargers for it. It is a USB-C charger provided by us that is 60601 certified. If you heard that acronym, it's the regulation that you have to go through to make sure that all of our equipment is safe and effective via the FDA.
Thanks. And then some questions about care. So cleaning the sleeve. We also got a question about wearing the sleeve while doing different activities, one being skiing and one being using an FES bike.
You want this one?
I'll take it. Yeah, I'll start with the cleaning. So we recommend that the material is sprayed down with an antibacterial fabric spray. You can get those at, over the counter. I mean, at any sort of drugstore or grocery store even. And so, just kind of recommend spraying down the material itself with the spray. And then when the gel pads are switched out, we recommend using a Clorox wipe or an alcohol, rubbing alcohol and a cloth and really kind of rubbing down the metal electrodes that are under the gel pads and making sure that those are all cleaned off of any residue. Generally, we recommend switching out those gel pads about once a month, although there's some variability on how often you need to switch out the gel pads, but definitely doing a full clean of the metal electrodes just so there's no buildup there, and then spraying down the fabric. I spray mine down more regularly than once a month, but generally get into a good habit of just kind of spraying down the material. Skiing.
I'll take the skiing one.
Okay, you can take it.
Not yet. Cycling, yes, we have a stationary cycling mode. It's to promote exercise in that. We do have ambitions of over time adding more activities. It's odd to think, as challenging as it is, gait is pretty straightforward to understand from one step, but the intent is to the next one. Skiing is a much more challenging one. I think next up will maybe be pickleball. That seems to be the most popular sport that is in our requests.
Great. Jeremiah, another question for you. Somebody who likes to travel a lot, will this be an issue to get through airport security? Can it travel as people go on trips through the airport?
Yeah, great question. We haven't seen it as an issue in traveling, but we do recommend people get a med device travel card, and we can actually provide that to you. Just says what the thing is, so that when you go through security, typically we'll take the control unit out, and also they'll wand you just to make sure. But we haven't seen anybody yet, hopefully, TSA get forced to take off their device when they're going through the airport.
We also provide additional documentation for anyone traveling as well. And I do think you need to take the control unit on your carry-on luggage.
We got a few questions about kind of the brain interface. So one is, how does the brain get trained if the stimulation is only on the leg muscles?
You want me to take that?
Sure.
Sure.
Well, you're the doctor here.
Yeah. So all of our movement occurs through what we call a sensory motor loop. And so there are sensations coming in through the skin. And additionally, there's sensation that happens when the muscle contracts, and those sensations go up into the brain. So even if the stimulation is at the muscle level, the information that is coming through at that level travels up to the brain, talks to the motor and sensory areas of our brain, and then that information comes back down out through the muscle. So even though that the stimulation is acting sort of at the muscle level and kind of going through a circuit at the muscle level, there it's still connecting back through the pathway that goes to the brain and comes back down to the body. And so the idea behind that is the information that is coming through the stimulation, as well as the changes in movement that are created when you wear the sleeve. So the movement pattern, that information is, the brain is processing that and is, it's feeding back down into your own motor system. And so that's the whole idea behind neuroplasticity, is that the new movement patterns that are created by the sleeve are getting reinforced in the brain, and then the brain is then has a record or a memory of these new movements and is then able to sort of create them or establish them on its own. And so that's the process that is ideally happening. So anytime you have changes in movement, sort of kind of more permanent changes in movement, that is indicative of neuroplasticity. So any motor learning that is carried over is sort of indicative of neuroplasticity, or that loop that is happening through the brain. I hope that made sense.
Yeah, I'll just add in a little bit to that, sort of from a less scientific, so maybe more of an anecdotal observation of some of our early trials. What we see is, even when we, typically we'll have someone come in, we'll ask them, to how much can they lift their toe, right? And in cases where we don't see any movement at all, we can still see a little signature of that muscle firing. So what often happens is you feel discouraged, right? You're told to lift your toe, you can't lift your toe, and you just stop trying to do. And what we're able to do is capture that little tiny bit of signal and amplify that with stimulation. When we do that, you're actually reinforcing just the task of motor movement. And as you reinforce any task, like an exercise, your body will continue to get stronger, both from sort of the muscle bulk and circulation and range of motion side, but also from what neural signaling pattern do I need to exert to cause that action to happen. And so if we say that neuroplasticity is the holy grail, and we can properly caveat it with results may vary, we do see anecdotes of where that reinforcement is leading to improvements in independent firing of these motor movements.
Great, thanks, Jeremiah. Do you mind going through one more time what is included in the price of the neural sleeve? There have been a few more questions about what's actually included. Are gel pads included? Do you mind just covering that one more time? Because I think we had some people join late.
Yeah, absolutely. So I will caveat this as well, as this is the current pricing, which is, and for anybody who purchases, well, this is a current pricing. This is the pricing for their first 12 months. It's $200 down payment, and then $200 per month. So that's the price, and that is inclusive of the sleeve. It is inclusive of all of the software and software updates, your time with the mobility specialist, and all of the replacement gel pads that you need to keep the system running for that first 12 months. It includes warranty as well. So if there's something that gets damaged with your sleeve, send it in and we'll fix it up. Did I miss anything, Anne?
Nope.
Nope. Okay.
Good. Thanks. A question: does the sleeve interfere with electrical fields, such as might be in a car?
Not that we know of. We do all the tests that the FDA asks us to do to make sure that that isn't the case. Yeah, to the extent that we were able to test it, the answer is it is safe to use in any environment, but don't jump in the pool.
And then there are lots of questions about, can I try it in person? Is there an opportunity to try it in person in different markets?
Great question. I'm excited to share that we have a number of, and a growing number of what we call our Centers of Excellence programs. The first one started at Shirley Ryan in Chicago. And these are places where individuals can go try out the sleeve, where they are, Shirley Ryan is the #1 rehab hospital in the country. So this idea of collaboration with your care team. So we now have 5 centers that are signed, and we're trying to grow that number. So there are more opportunities for people to go in person, try it out, and work with hands-on therapists. And we're also working in 2024 to basically do a road show. So we'd be going from city to city with options for people to sign up and come in to try. One thing I will say, the one-time single session for 30 minutes is a good thing to try, certainly. One of the things that we know is that it typically takes a bit longer to get the full understanding of how it's going to impact your gait, and that was the idea behind our pricing, so that you would pay that initial first month's fee for a full 1-month trial with all of the mobility specialists. And for many people, at what's that $200 down payment plus at $200 at $400 for that first month, it's less expensive than traveling to one of these places to just schedule a demo. So I encourage people to try it for a month at home to get the full understanding of how it would impact their mobility. However, we understand, we hear you, we're working on more opportunities for people to try it for 20 minutes at a time before they make that, what often is an emotional commitment to the technology.
We've had one question a few times, which is, after you have your initial setup appointment and you have your settings established, do you have to go through a full kind of fresh from start setup each time you put on the neural sleeve? Or can you just talk about kind of what it's like once you're up and running, how you would use it on a daily basis?
Yeah. So once you go through the onboarding and setup process, those settings are saved within the app. And the mobility specialists, we train you how to, educate you on how to make adjustments to your settings. But once you have those settings in, you're not having to generally not having to make large adjustments day to day. You might want to turn the intensity up or down, or make some minor adjustments. But for the most part, after you're set up, you're good to put the sleeve on every day and get going with the parameters that you have saved in there.
Great. Lots of questions about how to style the neural sleeve. Can you wear it under clothing, jeans, shorts, etc.?
Oh man, I feel like the person with the least style here on this call, but I will say that we designed it so that it could be worn under clothing. I wouldn't recommend wearing it under tight jeans. Certainly seen some people wear it under tight jeans, but it is like a dual layer of fabric. There is a pocket where the control unit goes in. It is about at where your normal clothing pocket level would be. So attempt to be discreet. Oftentimes, people will wear it under shorts or under skirts or dresses, or loose fitting pants. Becky, anything to add on that? I didn't really give you styling tips. I just gave you sort of, how it can live with you.
Yeah, I think for the most part, in terms of the tighter fitting pants, as long as there's some give or some stretch in the pants, generally those are okay. If there's not a lot of give and they're tight, the one concern is just really the pressure on the control unit. Sometimes we'll see when people go from sitting to standing, if their pants are really tight, there may be pressure on the control unit that actually kind of pauses the stimulation. But the other thing is sometimes it's harder to find, so you can pause the stimulation with the button on the control unit, and you can press that button through pants or any sort of clothing. But sometimes thicker clothing may make it a little bit harder, like if you had on snow pants or something like that, although probably not wearing it, although we do have people who wear it in the snow, but it may be harder to find that button.
Yeah,
To
you know,
pause the
you know,
device.
to pause it from the app as well.
You
So
can pause it from the app.
I mostly worry about when it's tight pants like jeans, interfering, as Becky said, with the mechanical coupling of that control unit with the sleeve. So.
Okay, one person submitted, it's a 3-part question. So the first 2 will be for Becky, and then I'll have the last one be for Jeremiah. So the first question is, does the sleeve work if you have MS and struggle with walking but don't have foot drop? So that's part 1. And then part 2 is, I noticed that people with the sleeve use aids like canes and walking sticks. Does it reduce or reliance on aids?
So to answer the first one, no, you do not need to have foot drop for the sleeve to be effective. And we have many people who do not have foot drop. Additionally, you don't have to have significant muscle weakness either. So the stimulation can be set at, in different intensities. Sometimes we set it to the motor level where maybe there's foot drop, for instance, and we really want to get the foot to lift up. And so we'll set it to the motor level. But other times we set it to below motor level, to a sensory level, where it's really just providing a sort of a timing and cueing for your own muscle to turn on and turn off according to the gait cycle. So sometimes in neurological conditions, muscles, you're able to contract the muscle, but it's hard to kind of turn it off at the time needed to kind of have an efficient gait pattern. So sometimes the stimulation, we can, like I said, we can use it in different ways. We can use it to kind of create more of a timing, or kind of timing for the muscle contraction, or we can set it to the motor level and really kind of help provide additional support or muscle contraction of that supplements your own.
Becky, it might help to describe some of the other gait symptoms that people report that we find the sleeve can be helpful for, right? So foot drop being one symptom that people have that we know we can help with. What are some of the other symptoms that people report that we can?
Yeah. So we see, well, there's some like primary gait impairments where we, for instance, we may see someone who has really difficulty flexing or bending the knee. So a lot of times after stroke, you may see someone, you may experience yourself where even though your knee does bend, when you're trying to walk, that knee kind of stiffens up, or you may have what we call co-contraction of hamstring and quad that doesn't allow a smooth movement or smooth bending of the knee. And so we can use stimulation. And again, variable depending on the individual, whether the hamstring stimulation or the quad stimulation is more effective, but using the stimulation in that case to create some knee bend to then allow the leg to swing more freely. We have individuals who have what we call ataxia, or some challenges with coordination. And so it's not always a result of weakness. It's just the timing of the muscle contraction is not what we typically see in gait. And so again, the stimulation kind of creates this pattern that allows the individual to contract their muscles more efficiently for walking. And then we see secondary impairments or compensations to gait. So again, someone who's not able to bend the knee, or maybe has foot drop, oftentimes we see what we call circumduction, where the leg kind of swings out to the side, or we see hip hiking, where you kind of bring the hip up to kind of move the leg through. And so we can, through working on some of those primary impairments of the knee flexion or the foot drop, we can secondarily work on the gait impairments, or where the compensations that often are happening at the hip or at the foot. And so can use it in a variety of ways.
Yeah, right now I'm working with my daughter on knee adduction, which is something that is fairly common with cerebral palsy gaits. Previously, we worked on crouch gait for her. So there, as a pretty flexible tool that allows us to address the many of the major muscle groups, hip flexors, glutes, not yet. We're able to do a variety of adjustments to gait patterns.
And there was
Great. And then,
yeah.
yeah, so part 3 of that question, Jeremiah, was, I think it goes back to the term that we use for experimental for insurance. So do you mind talking about the difference between FDA clearance and kind of insurance and CMS, Medicare in particular?
Oh man, what I didn't know before I started this company. So FDA clearance is not the same as coding, coverage, and reimbursement. So these are 3 steps that happen after clearance that are individual to individual payers. So even Blue Shield of Vermont is going to give you a different coding, coverage, and reimbursement than Blue Shield of California, right? So FES as a treatment modality is coded for most insurers, and there are sort of 3 different classifications, generally speaking, to codes that are considered widely medically necessary, codes that are considered experimental, and codes that are considered not medically necessary. If it's not medically necessary, they've made a determination that they're not going to pay for it. In experimental, they're saying, we really need your doctor to write us a really compelling note, and then we'll consider it. And I'm giving you this in this sort of the somewhat pessimistic view of the world. I believe that we as a group together will demonstrate the value to the payers in the community, take it out of that experimental category and move it into that 3rd category, which is medically necessary, where you don't have to argue with the insurance company every time. Now, even things that are medically necessary, you still see denial of claims. But I just want to set everybody's expectations around where we're at in the process as a new technology. And part of it, like when we talked about the pricing model, right? The down payment in the 12 months, we actually structured that to map to what in the DME world, durable medical equipment world, is paid for by Medicare on what's called a 13-month capped rental, right? This idea that you do rent to own while it works. And so we're trying to structure everything in a way and then go out and run the studies necessary to go and make the push with the payer to say, look, this is providing economic, right? And so the payers care about the economics of care, not the quality of care. It's interesting to think about, but they want to take that pool of dollars and spend it for the most effect overall. So low, a relatively low price point structured on this payment model, we think gives us the best shot to get it out of experimental and into widely coverage, but it'll take some time.
Great. Thanks, Jeremiah. A few questions about, one, is the sleeve compatible with the Apple Watch? And then 2, in the future, would there be a potential for enabling data export so that we can actually look at, neural sleeve data in conjunction with other fitness devices?
Yeah, it's exciting to hear people ask those questions, because that is so much what we think about. Like, how do we make this go beyond your expectations of what a medical device is? This is a lifestyle. As a consumer, I'm active, I'm out and doing things. And yeah, of course, I want my data to show up in HealthKit. So is it incompatible with the Apple Watch? No. Could we do more to leverage the Apple Watch both as a control service and to pull export our data into HealthKit? Absolutely. And that's something that is on our roadmap. Data export, we think that there's a lot of ways in which we want both our customers and our customers in collaboration with their care teams to be able to leverage and look at this data. And so we call it, generally speaking, metrics and reporting. That's another area, as I highlighted in the slideshow presentation, that we're going to continue to invest in ways in which to make that data more useful for you, including like if you are like quantified self and want to look at how this thing is impacting your life down to the details, I think that's an awesome request, and we're going to work to make that happen.
Thanks. One more question, maybe this one's for Becky. So how well does the sleeve help with co-contracting muscles like quads and hamstring? This has been one of the barriers for this person's ease of movement since they had their stroke. And then there was a separate question about stroke survivors using the sleeve in general. Do you mind just speaking to that?
Yeah. So in general, yes, we have many customers who've had a stroke. Stroke and MS are our primary, our largest groups. The co-contraction goes back to sort of that gait impairment where it's challenging to flex the knee or to bend the knee. And so again, everyone responds differently. So sometimes individuals who have sort of that co-contraction of quad and hamstring respond well when stimulation is on both. Some respond better when we're just stimulating the hamstring. Others respond better when we just stimulate the quad. And so when we do setup, because there's variability between individuals, a lot, there's some sort of trial and error with setup. So oftentimes we'll, spend the time to, try one particular stimulation pattern or setup, see how the individual responds. If not working well, we'll try another one, kind of find out what is the best pattern, and then have the individual use that for a period of time. So again, we do a setup, but really you see a lot of the changes occurring over time. So co-contraction of muscles is something that the nervous system is just, kind of instinctually doing to kind of provide stability, and that's the motor pattern that's reinforced. And so sometimes those patterns or those co-contractions take time to reset and relearn. And so there is that period of just, kind of seeing how the individual responds, and then maybe changing the parameters and progressing. But absolutely, we have lots of individuals who have co-contractions, and we certainly work with them.
Yeah, in our last big exercise update, we actually added some new exercise focused specifically on challenges of extensor tone, an extensor pattern, where as the knee extends, typically if someone has extensor tone, their toe tries to point down. We have a specific exercise that uses stimulation to try to break that pattern. Similarly, oftentimes that transition from plantar flexion pushing off at the end of gait to swinging, that's where you'll see a co-contraction as well. And so we've got an exercise specific to that.
Great. We've had a few more questions, I think, from individuals who joined maybe a few minutes after about prescription required. And again, what are the steps? So if somebody is interested in ordering a sleeve following this conversation, what should they do?
Yeah, so there's sort of two paths different people take. One is go ahead and do the order, go through the assessment, do the order, and then talk to their doctor. We'll send you the prescription sort of form, as well as information that you can share with their doctors. Other people choose to go talk to their doctors first, get some more information there. Both are totally reasonable to do. Process is pretty simple. They check a few boxes on the form as to which side they're prescribing for. So in the case, as Becky was saying earlier, if there's bilateral impairment, have them check both sides, even if you're just ordering one. And then, sort of giving us the diagnosis so that we can get the right codes for, potential filing of claims.
Great. There are a lot of great questions. So Android or iPhone only? Can you talk about the CIONIC app?
Both Android and iOS.
Great. Becky, two more quick questions for you, maybe not quick, but specific questions. So a follow-up for one of the individuals with who survived a stroke. If you have hyperselective neurectomy to help correct equinus foot, would that limit the effectiveness of the device?
I'm going to say no, but again, it's going to be something we'll have to trial and determine. For that, I was going to say, for that individual also, feel free to reach out to us so that we can get more specific information. Some individuals who have had surgical procedures or, I'll just leave it at surgical procedures, may have some limitations. Others may not. And so even if you haven't had a surgical procedure, you may have some limitations in movement and things like that. So if there are any specific questions about your individual anatomy or physiology, please don't hesitate to reach out to us, and we can certainly have a conversation around whether it'd be a good fit or not.
Thanks, Becky. And this one may have a broader application, which is, does the neuroplasticity feedback loop occur even with lesions in the spinal canal, like what happens with primary progressive MS, or is it mainly for brain lesions?
So the sensory motor loop goes up the spinal cord to the brain, down the spinal cord. So when there are lesions in the spinal cord, it does present differently than when there are lesions strictly in the brain. And so we do see a little bit more variability of response when there are spinal lesions with MS or spinal cord injury. Some people have what we call a stroke or aneurysm in the spinal cord, similar to what's in the brain. So the presentation may be a little bit different if there are spinal cord lesions. However, that sensory motor loop goes through the spinal cord to the brain. And so that loop is still occurring. The connection may be a little bit different if you have spinal lesions.
Great. Jeremiah, lots of questions about stairs. How does the algorithm, how do the gait profiles work with stairs?
Good question. So what we use is a combination of the kinematic sensors and the EMG sensors to understand the context of the individual. And so very simple, sort of description. When you're going upstairs, especially your thigh goes through a much different pattern of movement than it does when you're walking over a ground. So we can observe that, and we can change the stimulation pattern. So stimulation patterns for stairs, for example, requires a much longer duration of stimulation for the quadricep to help in that pushing up of the stair, and actually a shorter calf cycle, for example, and a different timing of the hamstring, because in neurotypical gait, you don't use a lot of hamstring. In stairs, you do, because you're actually pulling your foot off of the stair. And so how do we actually figure all that out? One of the great things about our technology is the sleeve in its ability to measure kinematics, and EMG means that all of the data that we collect to build these algorithms, we collect with the device itself. So we can collect this on a specific population, test population, develop the algorithms, and then tune them according to each individual needs. So that makes it easy relatively easy, I suppose you say, to understand what's happening, bring in new activities, and then to customize them, because the sensors and the stimulation all exist in the same package.
Great.
And I apologize, we're a little bit over time, and I unfortunately have a meeting to go to in 2 minutes, so we should probably wrap and tell everybody that if they have additional questions, we'll capture them all and try to answer them. In what fashion will we answer those questions, Anne?
Yes, we can answer them and send out a follow-up email with all of these. There are a few left, so we can respond in email.
Well, thank you, everyone. So great to connect with all of you. We'll do more of these over the course of time, especially as we have new announcements or new features that we want to introduce to the community. And we so appreciate being part of your mobility journey, and look forward to seeing you hopefully soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining.